Hello, I'd like to share a bit about writing and my process for writing. Well, I've been writing for most of my life, so it's really hard for me to actually analyse what I do because most of the time I just sit down and write. It helps to have a motivation because I tend to write something when I feel moved to do so. When I get impassioned about something, which is quite often. But even for the most experienced writer, it's really helpful to practice different styles and types of writing because that's a good way to improve your writing. I used to absolutely hate writing reviews, and I have kind of forced myself to write mini reviews rather than full-length ones, and that actually makes it easier for me to write full-length ones if I really feel that I have something to say about the book. So the first thing to think about when you're starting out on the writing path is obviously you're going to have that moment of staring at the blank piece of paper or the blank word processor screen and wondering what you're going to write. So the first step is to find your words. Practice writing frequently. And one way to kind of prime the pump and get yourself in the process of writing is to use writing prompts. There's an excellent one called Write for Your Life, which is a series of prompts for writing daily reflections and prayers by Merle Feld, who is a Jewish author and playwright. And she has suggestions which are really good for writing. First of all, a reflection and then forming that into a prayer. And of course, you can do that in any religious tradition, including paganism. And another practice that I've found really useful is something called Small Beauties, which was devised, I think, by Jacqueline Honeybee Durbin, who writes as Radical Honeybee on Instagram and Twitter. And it's a practice where you describe in words something beautiful that you've seen or experienced. Now, it can be accompanied by a photo, but the goal is to conjure the image of the thing in the reader's mind. So, to create a picture with your words, if you like. The next step, I would say, is to find your method. Some people prefer to write entirely by hand, and I know Thorn Mooney, for example, is one of those. She consistently stuns me with amazing photos of her beautifully written handwritten notebooks, and I'm just like, my writing's so messy, and I'm always going back and crossing things out, so that wouldn't really work for me. But I'm consistently impressed with her photos of beautiful handwritten items. Other people prefer to make notes first and then type into a text editor. And some people just start straight away with the text editor. So really try out all these different methods and see what works for you. Find your preferred tool. So that could be WordPress. Now, WordPress is really handy because you can move paragraphs up and down. I used to, when the block editor thing first came out, I really hated it. And then I've now actually found it really useful because, that paragraph doesn't quite work there. I think I'll just push it up the page or down the page, or so that can be really helpful. Other people prefer Microsoft Word, other word processor software. Some people like a notebook and pen. Merle Feld suggests getting the cheapest possible notebook you can, for the simple reason that then you don't feel like, oh my god, I've got this beautiful notebook, I can't write in it because it's too beautiful. So just get one from like the dollar store or something and write in that. Some people like to write in the Notes app on iPhone or Android. The book by Lee Maracle, Conversations with Canadians, she says she wrote it in the Notes app on her phone whilst on long train journeys. And if I'm stuck on a long journey with no Wi-Fi, then I will quite often write things in the Notes app too. So yeah, you'll probably find as well that you might prefer different tools and methods for different types of writing, whether that be fiction, poetry or non-fiction. and depending on whether it's a long form essay or a blog post on a single issue. Which leads me neatly on to finding your structure. So if I'm writing an article, I often jot down the key points before I start and attempt to come up with some sort of structure. And sometimes I just launch straight into it. There are also, for writing long form essays, there are essay writing guides available online. So, you know, where you go like put the pros and the cons of a particular issue, or first this happened and then this happened. There are structure guides available online for that kind of thing. If you're writing a blog post or an opinion piece, it's a good idea to start with an anecdote from your life that shows why you are qualified to write about the topic, or why it interests you, why you feel strongly about it. And I think also it's a good idea to try and only have one theme in a paragraph. So the art of the paragraph is a tricky one, because sometimes you want to split it into two and sometimes you don't. But you just have to see what suits your style for that, really. And then I think the next step is to find your voice. What's your personal style? Are you formal? Are you informal? Are you funny? Are you anecdotal? Now, I have seen one or two bloggers who like to include a lot of swear words in what they write. Now, I must admit that in personal conversation, I swear like a trooper, but you won't catch me doing that online unless I feel extremely strongly about the particular issue. You know, the use of swearing in online writing is something that you should use very sparingly, in my opinion. It's like a bomb being dropped in the middle of the thing, so use very sparingly. Have a look at house style guides that are published on the internet. You can get quite a lot of information about good writing and grammar and that kind of thing from those guides, and it also tells you how to communicate clearly, so that's important. And another one is there's various writing guides for creative writers about sentence structure, and if you have a long sentence, that has a different impact than if you have short, choppy, rhythmic sentences. So it depends what you're trying to convey. So if you're trying to convey sort of calm, pastoral type of atmosphere, then you probably want longer sentences. And if you want a fast-paced, exciting thing, then you have lots of short sentences, because that makes the prose move faster. Have a look at other bloggers and analyse their style. What do you like or dislike about their style? And when you finish writing your piece, read it aloud. Does it come out? Does it flow nicely? Does it feel stilted? Is it easy to read? And if necessary, can you make the sentences shorter? So if you've got a long, very, very long sentence and you can't breathe and you run out of breath, then you probably need to restructure that sentence. So review your writing. Always read over what you wrote before hitting publish, because 10 to 1 you've missed out a word, you've missed out a crucial point that you intended to make. You might want to add some links to back up your points that you're making. If you've mentioned someone by name, did you get their permission? And if you've used somebody else's idea, did you credit them for that idea? And if they are not willing to have you write about their idea, then obviously remove it, which I have done in the past. And I think my final piece of advice would be just write. The wonderful thing about blogging is that it doesn't have to be polished, and you don't have to be an accomplished writer when you start. You can learn as you go along, and your writing will get better as you do more of it. So when I first started blogging 12 or 13 years ago now, I think it's actually longer, 2003, so it's actually 18 years ago, oh my goodness. So I was writing very short blog posts because that was the style, the fashion of blogging at the time, unless you were on LiveJournal, in which case you had to write everything about your day. So, and as I've gone along, I've learnt more by reading other people's style and, learning from other bloggers. And also, if you want to get an audience for your blog, go comment on other people's blogs. Allow comments on your blog, because then you know that people are reading and responding to what you've written. And go and comment on other people's blogs, follow other people's blogs, link to articles that other people have written, because then you get a ping back and then they'll come and read your stuff. Because obviously not just writing into a void, you're writing for an audience. And the way to attract that audience is to actually go and comment on other people's stuff. I cannot stress that highly enough. It's really important, because that's how you create community online, is actually reciprocally reading other people's stuff and commenting on other people's stuff. And you will learn a lot about writing from reading other people's stuff. Even if the other people's stuff isn't that great, you can analyse what they're doing wrong, and if they're doing good stuff, then you can learn from that too. I learnt the thing about writing an anecdotal paragraph at the beginning of the post from Dodie Graham Mackay, who wrote an excellent piece. And I can't remember what the piece was about, but I remember that it started with an anecdote that illustrated the main point of the article. So the power of telling a story is really important, and people will remember the stories you tell long after they've forgotten what point you were trying to make. So make sure that your story includes the point that you were trying to make. So there you go. I hope that's been helpful to all you budding writers out there. Hope to see more pagan writers doing their thing on the internet, and hope you will come and comment on my blog and my YouTube videos, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Okay, have a nice day now.